Welcome, all of you, to our Sunday gathering. It's lovely to see you all and to share this afternoon with you. We've got a bit of music to sing to later on, but before we get into the service proper, we're going to start with our opening invocation. These are the words written by Charles Fillmore, exactly as he wrote them. And as Ken was explaining last month, the idea is that we are invoking the presence here with us, as us, around us. So let's say the words together. I am now in the presence of pure being, immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. I acknowledge thy presence and thy power, O blessed Spirit. In thy divine wisdom, now erase my mortal limitations, and from thy pure substance and love, bring into manifestation my world according to thy perfect law. So let's take a few moments of quiet. Stillness is the perfect way to know God more fully. Out of the silence comes all our good, springs life and love eternal. We have the candle lit in the middle of the room to represent the Christ light within us all, including all those who would be with us today but are on their holidays or travelling away busy doing their summer activities. We give thanks for each of us. And we give thanks for the divine presence that is with us this afternoon and in every moment. Pure wisdom and love. And as we move through this time together this afternoon, we do so with that sense of wisdom and love guiding us and blessing us as we open into the knowing of this presence more fully, more deeply. Today we are talking about bridging the gap. That's the title of the talk. I was inspired by this title from a book I've been reading called The Presence Process. Which I haven't brought with me, we're not going into now, but the title grabbed my attention. And you might like to ask, what's the gap that I'm talking about? So in this instance, for this talk particularly today, the gap is the perceived space between us in which the world exists. So therefore, for the sake of this talk, the gap is our experience of the world. So rather like we're sitting in this room, we're each in our chairs, there's me and there's you and there's you and there's you and there's you and there's you. And in between is the named world. The candle, the tea light with the lovely scent going into the room, the flowers, the table, the floor, the chairs, the named world. And for us to have our human experiences that we do, we have to have an agreement of what we're experiencing. So there has to be an understanding of all these separate things that we seem to see around us. And of course, we've named everything, and generally we agree on what those names are. And in Genesis, the interesting thing about this for me in Genesis is it's that man, it was Adam, which is the name for man, named them, not God. It wasn't that God named everything. We had the authority to name it. We named it. We named the chair, the table, the room, the oxygen. And we've given it the meaning that we see it as. We've given it purpose. And when we agree on the purpose, it's wonderful. Life's harmonious, we're happy, everything's going along. When we disagree on what the purpose is, then that's when we get ourselves into war and conflict. So we can focus on everything being separate. I've named it, and this is what I say it is, and this is why we have it. For example, for the incense that's going there, I don't burn joss sticks because I know that some people struggle with the scent and, with asthma and that sort of thing. But some people might say that's a wonderful thing. I really approve of you doing that. And others might say, oh no, I can't stand it. It's wrong. It shouldn't be there. You know, we name it. And if we're happy with it, we feel good. And if we're unhappy with it, it creates conflict in us. And the more we focus on feeling separate from each other and focusing on the gap that's in between us, the more isolated we feel, the more alone we feel, the more frightened we feel. And then we'll get angry, we'll get defensive, we get into blame and judgment. And as far as I can see, all the emotion that's going on the planet right now, all of that is everyone focusing on me versus you, I'm right and you're wrong. And all that anger and resentment is just being blasted out at everybody. But the problem is, you see, that we think we are the body, which is separate from your body, and that's who I am. We think we're our own mind, we have our own mind, and that my thoughts are separate from your thoughts. We think that we have our own heart, and therefore our emotions are my own emotions and nobody else's. And it all can feel very scary and frightening when we think like that. The opposite, which is what we talk about in unity all the time, is oneness with God. And it's become a big expression in unity. It's not something you find in the old books of unity. They talk about it, but not using this expression. But nowadays, we really talk about oneness with God. But how do we experience this oneness? You know, it all sounds lovely. Oh, yes, I want to experience oneness. But how do we go about that? Well, for starters, it depends on how you see God. What does God mean to you? In unity, God is not a being, someone separate, sitting on a throne out there, but beingness itself, the activity, the presence that is all of life in motion, the energy that combines all of us. We talk about God as being the one presence and one power. And Paul wrote, the presence, he called it the Christ presence, but the Christ in which we live and move and have our very being. He had that sense of oneness, of connection, of unity. And I like to talk about God as allness, really, universal presence. The word God can get so in the way because everyone's got their own idea. Again, we've given God meaning, we've named God and given it our purpose, and this is what God means to me, and I'm right and you're wrong. So God is a word that can really get in the way. So I tend to use for myself presence quite a lot. All that is a common expression in unity now. I love the idea of God being a hologram. Science talks about, some scientists talk about life being a hologram, that all of life is in every moment. That's what a hologram is. And some scientists are talking about that now, that this is what life is. We can talk about it as the unified field, where we all come together in that sense of oneness. And when I was thinking about this today, it was a real sense of, there's just that God is not separate out there anywhere. It's God. We are in God. We are of God. But we've so got used to seeing everything as separate that we've created all the conflict that we have today. So, examples of experiencing life, living in this unified field, in this God consciousness, in the Christ consciousness, unity uses a lot. I don't know whether you've ever done this. I've heard stories of this. When someone is in pain, somebody else experiences that same pain. They see somebody, and I've seen stories and heard stories about women in childbirth, and their men get that same agony, and they feel the same pain of their wife going through childbirth. We think about someone, and then we bump into them, or they ring, and all of a sudden they're there physically. I thought of Agatha really strongly this morning. I haven't seen Agatha for months, and here Agatha is. It's wonderful. Yes, absolutely. Well, that's right. That's how it's working. There is one divine mind. Charles Fillmore talked about God as divine mind. There is one divine mind having all these thoughts, having all these emotions, having all these experiences. We think we're separate and isolated within it, and we're not. We're all part of it. And I think it's fabulous. This is why I love unity. So what does it tell us? I'm expecting you all to yell out that we're psychic. And it's like, no, that's not what I'm going at. It's our physical bodies aren't separate. And again, they talk about this in quantum physics now, don't they? The atoms moving in and out and moving around, nothing is separate. It's all connected by thought. Our mind isn't located just inside our body. It extends to any distance we care to think about. Paul was talking about the prayer, and we thought of people and they come to us. And we talk about the Olympics and we're in Rio, there with them, And that's how prayer works, when we hold that consciousness of oneness and God being good as us, then that's how prayer works. There is no separation, there's no me and you, it's all within this unified field. Our emotional experiences aren't confined just to us, they're shared. We all have them. Our ongoing consciousness and experiences aren't personal and exclusive, they're universal and inclusive. We're all in this together, that's what I wrote down. And we are. So here's where free will comes into it. We all talk about free will. We could have a debate about free will, which we won't do now. But we'll keep it simple. Free will, we can choose what we're going to focus on. Are we going to focus on the space between us, where we put meaning and purpose that makes me right and you wrong? Are we going to continue to feel outside of God, separate, frightened, alone? I was going to ask, actually, if you've done this, and we've all done it, how has it worked for you so far to do that? Because it's not worked for me very well, this I know. Or we can choose to focus on what connects us. And that's a wonderful Myrtle Fillmore quote. I read it. I don't know which one of her books, but she said, let's focus on what connects us, not what divides us. And it's all about that choice. What am I going to choose? And can we stay open to these experiences that connect us, to these unifying experiences where we recognize more and more that this is proof of oneness, if you like? Can we stay open to allowing ourselves to witness when we're connecting with each other through similar emotions, through similar ideas, through the thought and the prayer work? Can we continue to do that? And when we find ways, we were at the cinema the other day and I just happened to be looking at someone and she looked at me. And it's like, oh. But it's proof of the connection. And all the time we have these little experiences. They all add up and build upon that deeper experience and knowing of the oneness that we share. So instead of talking about it, and I'm doing it today just to explain it to you as an example, but instead of boasting, if you like, or whatever, sharing about it, and then somebody else who's not on the same wavelength may well just poo-poo it and say, oh no, you're imagining it, it's not true, and then all that energy is gone and it's lost. Instead of talking about it and sharing it, holding it, making it become real and established and grounded so that we know more and more solidly that we are one through all these experiences that build on each other like Lego blocks, build on one another, building it all up. In HeartMath, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of HeartMath, it's quite an institution, they've done lots of research. They talk about this as coherence, that's their word for it. Avatar, the film, wonderful film Avatar, I see you. Can we really see each other? Can we embody love by accepting ourselves and each other just the way we are, without all the stuff that's in the way, to know that God is the one presence and one power? We can when we're feeling in a good space. It's easy when we're feeling in a good space. When everything's going well and life around us seems to be good, it's easy to connect in that way. When it isn't, when it all seems to be going wrong, when we get all our challenges that come up, then it is really hard to remember to turn our attention back to God. And in Unity we talk about non-resistance. I've got a lovely quote from Eric Butterworth that he wrote in Discover the Power Within You. He says, agree with your adversary quickly, remembering that the adversary is not the person or situation that stands before you, but your reaction to or feeling about it. So it's not the person or the situation that's the adversary, it's our reaction to it. It has been said that things may happen around you and things may happen to you, but the only things that really count are the things that happen in you. We can't always control what's happening to us. I would like to say we can never control what's happening to us. But we can control how we respond. We can control what we are thinking about, what happens, and what we are thinking about is our life at that particular moment. So our response is our life experience in that moment. And it's it's an ongoing life practice to practice non-resistance. And for that it means letting go of the need to be right. And the mind is really crafty in how it wants to be right. Honestly, I mean, I think I've got something and then it gets me somewhere else. And it's like, oh, here we go. I am needing to be right and therefore making the other wrong, basically. So if we can really allow ourselves to recognize that our adversary is not the person or the problem, it's how I respond to it. That's like a gentle reminder to say, oh, okay, I'm caught up in this illusion of separation again. And now we need some tools to help us. And one of the strong unity tools is denials. But the denials that we talk about in unity are basically denying whatever we're experiencing as having power over us. So this has no power over me. This is not the truth of who I am. I have nothing to fear, for God is here. Jim Rosemurgy says it beautifully, because we talk about let go and let God in unity a lot. He says, when I let go of holding on, when I can allow myself to let go of holding on, I find I am held. But we don't know we're held until we stop holding on, because we think, I've got to do it. I've got to make this right. I've got to make this work. But if we can let go of that, we find we are held. And the more we can do that, the more we develop and cultivate trust in God as our experience. Another way to deal with this is when I talk about pain, I talk about not physical pain, but emotional pain, emotional hurt. When it comes up and slaps us in the face in all the ways that it does, gets our attention, can we simply be aware of it and let it go and let it fall away, asking at the same time what needs to be known here? What is mine to know about this? Because if we're in an experience of pain, there's a reason for it. So it's not just letting it go, but what's mine to know about this? But in a very gentle, self-loving way. So that's another technique. The third technique, which I have been practicing a lot lately, and is not something that Unity talks about, but I've got from this Presence Process book, is learning to feel the pain without a thought. And that is really hard. When we get stuck in anger, and I'm really angry about something, my mind goes into what I'm angry about, and it's their fault. And they shouldn't do this. It shouldn't be done that way. It's all wrong. And the anger is built up by the thinking and the thought process. To feel the anger in the body, wherever it is, without that thought, is one of the most challenging things I'm learning to do, to be honest. To feel the emotion without the thought that's attached to it. But if we can do that, we allow ourselves a moment to connect with it and feel it. And underneath that, remembering that when we stop holding on, we find we are held in God, we can settle into through that, and it dissolves and we experience joy. And all I can tell you is the few times that I have been able to do this, and it isn't a whole heap, but the few times that I have experienced such joy and freedom and strength and grace, because all of that pain dissolves, because it's not real. It's based upon the story I hold in my head. It's another technique. So those are three techniques: the denials, the surrendering, what's here for me to know, and the feeling of it, to allow it to dissolve in the light and the love, as we talked about in Daily Word, that God is dissolving it. And I've just as a brief example, I've realized for me that my thing is rejection. He talks about in this book about there's a core issue at childhood that we experienced that we go back to time and time again, and I've realized for me that mine is rejection and abandonment, because that's what I experienced as a child. My mum's told me the stories, I understand here, but the pain still gets held here. But every time anything happens that's not how I want it to be, because it's not following the purpose and meaning that I gave it, I feel rejected and abandoned. And then I get upset and I get hurt, and it's like, oh, I'm a failure. And all that self-worthlessness stuff, all the other issues that come around that, because of this one feeling of always going back to the core issue, rejection and abandonment. I don't do it all the time. When I don't get in touch with it, I'm angry, I'm defensive, it's everybody else's fault, I'm leaving, all the stuff that we get into. But when I feel it and I allow myself to know, it's like, oh, it's back to that again. And it's my interpretation of event that was only held in my head. I'm giving you this example just to let you know that I'm not talking about it just because I've read it in a book, but because I really am practicing it. I really believe there is freedom in experiencing our emotions without the story, without the thought that we put to it. Now, obviously, if it's not a feeling that we're going through, if it's just, because Unity talks about denials and affirmations and change your thinking, change your life, if changing the thinking is something that you can do by repeated denial, this is not true, this is the truth, and that works, brilliant. Because that is something Unity has done for years and years and years. But if there's a real hurt, painful feeling in there that's kicking in, my experience is the mind can't fix it. I have to deal with it in the body, in the emotion, and allow it to integrate. But what I do when I do that is I bridge the gap. I'm no longer seeing myself separate from you with all that emotion in the way. All of a sudden I'm feeling connected again. It enables me to open to the unlimited possibilities of God that are here in each moment, to find the ways that connect us, not the ways that divide us, the things that divide us. It enables me to really love and appreciate who I am and love and appreciate who you all are. And it works. But it takes effort, it takes practice, and what we see in the world around us, in my humble opinion, is people's unintegrated pain. That there is so much pain that we are carrying that we don't know how to handle it. It hurts so much, we project it out at the world because we can't deal with it. And so all the violence, all the killing, all the destruction, all the physical hurting of another human being is our own unintegrated pain projected out. And in my opinion, there's never been a better time to really get this idea that I don't need to be like that anymore. I can choose to respond in a different way. I can choose to be God as me more fully by allowing all that hurt and that pain to dissolve, to know that's not who we are and find that better way to connect. So I have a little meditation experience. I'll invite you to put your papers down and get comfortable in your chair. The daily word today, God's kingdom of light and love is established in our hearts. Get a sense of feeling God's light and love established in your heart right now. An inner sense, an inner experience. The light and the love. So that in you right now is a sense of connecting to this light and this love as you, as who you are. It may help to smile a little, to get a sense of appreciation. Give yourself a moment of loving yourself absolutely and unconditionally. I love and appreciate myself just the way I am right now. Get a sense of being held in the arms of God. That sense of being loved absolutely and unconditionally. It doesn't matter who we think we are. We are beloved of God. And now in your mind's eye, see a pet or a person you love, something you love, standing in front of you. Get a sense of connecting with that being, that nothing separates you, there is no gap, and that you truly love and appreciate them for who they are right now. And feel the heart opening into the deeper experience of love, and draw to us now in your imagination, see in front of you someone that maybe you struggle with, someone that is not so easy to be with. See them in front of you, and as much as you can, close the gap. See what connects you. Love connects you. And as much as you can, say, I love and appreciate you just the way you are, right now. To any place of conflict in the world, any individual that seems to be causing harm to another through their sense of fear and separation. See them in front of you right now, and as much as you can, say to them and feel it, I love and appreciate you just the way you are right now. And bring your attention back to yourself finally now in this last closing part of this exercise. Bring your attention back to who you are. You can put your arms around yourself physically or in your mind. Give yourself a hug and say, I love you and appreciate you just the way you are. Let's do that together out loud. I love you and I appreciate you just the way you are right now.
Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count this be my joy.